Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Great Scott! There's no crying in baseball!
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
This is where the fun begins.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right, we're ranking Conclave. Conclave is a 2024 mystery thriller film based on the 2016 novel Conclave by Robert Harris. Conclave follows the tense story of a secretive Vatican election where political and spiritual conflicts arise as cardinals gather to choose a new pope. A movie I thought had a very interesting premise I knew nothing about and was fairly good. Let's talk about it by getting into those 10 essential aspects of a movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? I thought the plot of this movie was very interesting. It is obviously kind of the driving force of this movie because it is a mystery. It is about electing this new pope and people making arguments for themselves or other people on why they should or should not be the new pope. And it was interesting. It was interesting to have to form opinions about these characters as you learned about them and then learned that maybe some people were just putting up an act. Maybe some of the quiet people were the most interesting people. I thought they did a good job with all of the dialogue to expand this story and understand it and get deeper as you get deeper into the movie. Thought it was well done. However, with those mystery films, some of the problems are the rewatchability is not that great. I don't think watching this a second, third, or fourth time is going to be interesting. I think it's only going to get worse because you already know what's coming and there's not enough small details in the background that you may have missed to catch up on the second or third watch. That's the only unfortunate thing about the plot. However, it is a good story on the first go around. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? I do feel that if you are religious, you probably enjoy this movie a little bit more. It just probably hits a little harder for you. Some of the concepts or characters or some of the things being said or the traditions in it. However, you do not need to be religious to enjoy this movie. Now, I knew nothing about this process. I didn't even know it existed in the first place, and I found it very entertaining. I think if you are not religious, you understand the implication of choosing a new pope. You understand how important the pope is to a large group of people, and not, therefore the tension of deciding the right person will come through to you too, whether you're religious or not. I thought the attraction of this movie is the mystery of this movie. Even if you know what's going on as far as you understand this process and knew what it was, it'll be interesting to figure out who they choose and why. But if you're somebody like me that had no idea this even existed, how it went down, then on top of the idea of it being a mystery, the idea of learning what goes on and that this is an actual thing that occurs is very interesting. Third is theme. What message or truth is the movie trying to convey? Now again, if you're religious, I think this is a message that hits a little harder for you. You probably have a little more knowledge on what is expected from you out of a certain religion. If you're not religious, you may still know these things. You probably understand the concepts, the general moral concepts of religion, and the theme and message of this movie was the struggle between your personal wants and your spiritual duty, the things that God is asking you to do and the moral code that you need to uphold to, and the struggle between doing that and actually getting what you want or what you believe is right. I think it's an interesting message. I think you will have a couple points in this movie that you will question the character of these people who are supposed to be some of the highest spiritual leaders. You will question the fact that are they worthy of even having that title for the way that they think or the way that they act? I think it's an interesting premise and an interesting thing to think about. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversation? This is one of the highlights of the movie, and it really drives the entire movie. I mean, the whole movie is pretty much dialogue. If they failed on this aspect, they would have failed as a movie. I did not think they did. I thought they spoke in a very real way, and it helped that the conversations that they were having were on very interesting topics. They would say things every now and then that would help you piece together the whole puzzle. I thought it was just done really well. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, personally, I would not say that anybody stood out in this movie as some really good acting, but there are a lot of recognizable faces in this movie that you will see and know that they have been in previous movies, and they all do a really good job. They work together well. I just didn't think anybody stood out over another, but the acting in this movie is really good. 6 is cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? Now, I felt the lighting, setting, and wardrobe aspect was done well. I thought it was interesting. I think the Vatican is a very interesting place, an interesting setting that is not commonly done in movies. Thought it was interesting to look at. I liked a lot of the wardrobes. I enjoyed the setting. However, emotion-wise, I didn't really feel any emotion. This maybe somewhat, there might be some tense aspects, but really, the movie did well in making you think. It made you think about who you liked, who you didn't like, who you wanted to be Pope, who you didn't want to be Pope. That was the interesting part, figuring out the thriller. Not necessarily that there was really sad or happy or tense moments, but more, this movie is just about making you think. 7th is editing. Now, this is all about the pace of the movie. The movie is about 2 hours long. You know, for a movie that is all dialogue, felt like a really good amount of time. I wasn't sitting there hoping it was going to wrap up. I probably would have if it went 10-15 minutes longer, but it didn't. It wrapped up when it needed to. There are enough interesting plot changes to keep you wondering what's happening next, keep you thinking about what characters are, what else could there be, what else could he find. I think there's plenty of substance in this movie to keep you interested, and 2 hours is a good time. 8th is soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack to this movie is really not present. There's not much of a soundtrack, but what is here is noticeable. The times that there was some music, I noticed it as a movie watcher. I thought it was good and added to a lot of the scenes. 9th is directing. Now I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 aspects. They're the ones that have to put it all together and give it their stamp of approval to make a good movie. Now, the director of this movie is Edward Berger, and this is his 6th movie that he has directed. The previous 5 movies were, and I am going to butcher this, Gomez, Kopf oder Zahl, Female 2 Seeks Happy Ending, Jack, All My Loving, All Quiet on the Western Front, and finally Conclave. I have never watched any of those movies. I have heard good things about All Quiet on the Western Front. It seems like he is stepping into a little bit of a more a larger role as a director, getting movies that are going to be seen by more people. I think he's interesting. I think he has enough of an interesting take to warrant him being a director. I think he knows how to structure a movie and has a unique perspective and has something to offer. I'll be interested to see what else he makes. 10th is time. Will it stand the test of time? Personally, no, probably not. That's just something that comes with a lot of these mysteries, that once you know the mystery, it's over. It's a good first watch, but not many directors or storytellers are capable of giving you a mystery that makes you go back and back and back and back to watch it again, because it's just that good, even though you know what's going to happen. That's something that's rare. This movie does not fall into that rare category, and I just don't think it will get any better with time. It will still just be a good movie, but not one that you will watch again. Now for the review section. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it a 91, the audience gives it an 85, and IMDb gives it a 77. Personally, I think 91 is just too high. It is a good movie, but when we're talking about in the scope of every movie ever made, it is not an A movie. I think actually it's somewhere between 85 and 77. It is somewhat of a low B-tier movie. It is not good enough. It doesn't have the rewatchability nor the emotion to warrant it being a very high movie, but it is a good movie and does a lot of things well and very little things that I can complain about. Finally, for the rankings. For the year of 2024, out of 22 total movies, on the entertainment side, it's going to be 13th, just below Transformers 1 and above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I've got it above Ghostbusters because Ghostbusters is only saved by the fact that it's in the Ghostbusters universe. There are better Ghostbusters movies to go watch. There are some aspects that were somewhat interesting, but Conclave, it just has a lot more going for it. It doesn't really have any bad spots in it. I just think I would prefer to watch it for... I enjoy the characters. I enjoy thinking about the moral implications. There's a lot of things I enjoyed while watching this movie that I just don't think I enjoyed as much watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now I've got it below Transformers 1. Transformers 1 is really made for entertainment. That movie is not really going for a whole lot cinematically. And it does it fairly well. The only reason I just wouldn't watch it again is the fact that it's really a kid's movie. That doesn't do great with adults, but it does okay. And so I just think I would have an easier time picking up Transformers 1 and watching it than I would Conclave. Now, cinematically, out of 22 total movies, it's going to be 7th, just below Trap and above Joker, Fully Ando. And Trap and Conclave, honestly, very similar movies in their rewatchability, somewhat of mysteries, somewhat of thrillers, that when you watch it again, it's probably not going to be as good, but I would give the advantage to Trap. I think Trap is easier to watch on the second time. I think it is still going to keep some of those emotions because the main character of that movie is done really well, and I like that representation of really diving into a character and it being really interesting. I thought Shyamalan did a great job of having you somewhat root for somebody you really shouldn't root for. I thought that was interesting. I just think it brings a little bit more to cinema as an art form than Conclave, which is really just another mystery thriller with a little bit of character diving into characters and trying to understand them. I just think Trap does it a little better. Now, as far as Joker Folie à Deux, it has its problems. Conclave just doesn't. And that's really where I separate these two. The acting is good, the story is interesting in Joker, but they had several things that I just don't quite understand why they made those decisions. Conclave doesn't have those problems. It's a well-made movie. There's a couple things that it does good, and then very, very little that it does great, but it is a good movie with very little to complain about, and that's why I'll put it over Joker, because Joker definitely has things to complain about. Now, for the decade of the 2020s, out of 24 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to go 14th, just below Transformers 1 and above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's there for the exact same reasons as 2024. Now, cinematically, out of 24 total movies, it is still 7th, just below Trap and above Joker Fully Ando. And it's there for the exact same reasons as 2024. Now, for all time, out of 34 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to be 22nd, just below Transformers 1 again, but this time above Treasure Island. Treasure Island is a hard one. Treasure Island really suffers from the fact that it is a very long movie. And it is somewhat entertaining, but it is just way too long for the story that is being told. My attention was held a lot more on Conclave than it was for Treasure Island, and that's really where it's going to get the bump above it. It's just, if I had to watch the two, I would just prefer Conclave for the fact that it just doesn't feel as long. It's a little more interesting throughout the entire movie. Now, cinematically, out of 34 total movies, it's going to be 11th, just below The Mist and above The Martian. Now, I've got it below The Mist. The Mist, it just does something for me emotionally. I really like the character development in that movie. It suffers from its time. It doesn't look great. There are sections of bad acting, but there's sections of great acting. I just think The Mist provides more as an art form because it really, I feel, pulls you into the story. It is an interesting concept, makes you think about what you would do, and really dives into what humans do with their back up against the wall. I just think it's a very interesting concept to dive into. I think it's a little better than Conclave, but you could argue that Conclave does some things better, but I just feel the things that are done in The Mist better are more important to cinema as an art form. Now, it is above The Martian. The Martian, in Conclave, somewhat similar in the sense that they're good movies. They don't do anything great, but I will say that Conclave has better character development. The characters are a little deeper, more interesting. They feel you just somewhat have a character development with Matt Damon in The Martian, but it felt somewhat shallow. Even though you're with him this whole time, it felt like they really didn't dive into emotion like they could have. I feel the moral thoughts and the evaluation of people on who you want to be Pope and not be Pope in Conclave is just more interesting and represents film better because you're actually going into a character deep dive rather than The Martian that's really just telling a story. It just tells a story well, but it doesn't really get too deep into it. That's all I've got for Conclave. If you have not seen it, I would recommend it. I think it's a good movie to watch. If you are interested in watching some movie reviews from somebody who maybe has a different opinion, then go check out my best friend Bosso Movie Reviews. He does the exact same format that I do, ranking movies against the same year, decade, and all time, even including the 10 essential aspects. So if you like my format and want to see somewhat of a different perspective, then I would go check him out. Make sure to comment what movie you want me to review. If you want to see that review sooner than other people's comments, then you can check out my PayPal link in the description, and you can donate any amount, even a penny. Anything will get you above people who have not donated. I'm just doing this as a way to support my channel, help me maybe broaden out and do more with it, make more content, maybe do something a little different. I don't know. If you have an opinion, make sure to comment it. But regardless, you don't have to do that. Comment a movie and I will get to it. Make sure you subscribe so that you can see when I do make the video for your comment. But otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.